Have you ever wondered why peace can feel so far away, even when nothing is terribly wrong? You may have a safe place to sleep, people who care about you, and many things you once hoped to have. Yet somewhere beneath the surface, your mind remains restless. It returns to old conversations. It imagines problems that have not happened. It tries to understand why someone changed, why something ended, or why life has not unfolded the way you expected. Perhaps you have been telling yourself that peace will come later. It will come when the uncertainty ends, when someone finally understands you, when your health improves, when the right opportunity appears, or when the past no longer hurts. But what if peace is not waiting for you somewhere in the future? What if it is already here, quietly hidden beneath everything you have been carrying? There are moments when life becomes so noisy that you forget the difference between the voice of your fear and the voice of your true self. Fear speaks quickly. It warns you, compares you, pressures you, and reminds you of everything that might go wrong. Your true self speaks differently. It does not shout. It does not argue. It does not need to prove anything. It often appears as a quiet feeling, a gentle knowing, or a moment of stillness in which you suddenly remember that you are more than the thoughts passing through your mind. The 5 lessons we will explore are not rules for controlling the world. They are not techniques for making every person behave as you wish or for removing every difficulty from your path. They are invitations to look within and rediscover the part of you that has never been damaged by disappointment, rejection, uncertainty, or change. Because the deepest spiritual work is not about mastering what happens around you, it is about understanding what happens within you. Imagine waking up in the morning and immediately reaching for your phone. Before your feet touch the floor, your mind has already entered the lives of other people. You see someone celebrating an achievement, someone traveling, someone appearing happier, younger, healthier, or more certain than you feel. Without realizing it, you begin your day by leaving yourself. You compare your private struggles with someone else's carefully chosen moments. You question your progress. You wonder whether you are falling behind. And by the time the morning has truly begun, your inner peace has already been exchanged for an illusion. The ego often lives through comparison. It creates an image of who you should be, where you should be, and how your life should look. Then it judges the present moment for failing to match that image. But life is not asking you to become someone else. It may be asking you to return to yourself. A tree does not look across the forest and feel ashamed because another tree is taller. A river does not believe it has failed because its path curves instead of moving in a straight line. Nature does not compare. It expresses, it grows according to its own rhythm, guided by an intelligence it does not need to explain. Perhaps the same intelligence is moving through you. There may be seasons when your life appears still. Nothing seems to be changing. The answers do not arrive. The next step remains unclear. Yet beneath the surface, something may be taking root. A seed buried in the ground does not appear productive. To the eye, it seems lost in darkness. But within that darkness, an invisible transformation is taking place. You may be in such a season now. You may believe that you are stuck when you are actually being invited to listen more deeply. You may think you have lost your direction when an old direction is simply no longer true for you. You may feel disconnected from your purpose because you have been looking for it through the expectations of others. Many people spend years becoming what they believe they must become in order to be loved. They learn to be agreeable. They avoid disappointing anyone. They say yes when their heart quietly says no. They become skilled at sensing the needs of everyone around them, yet they slowly lose contact with their own inner voice. This can look like kindness, but beneath it there may be fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood, fear that love will disappear the moment you stop performing for it. Eventually, the body and spirit grow tired. You may begin to feel emotionally exhausted without knowing why. You may resent people you genuinely care about. You may long for solitude, not because you dislike others, but because solitude is the only place where you no longer have to maintain an identity. And perhaps this exhaustion is not a failure. Perhaps it is a message. It may be the deeper part of you saying you have traveled far enough away from yourself. The path back does not begin by blaming anyone. It does not require you to reject your family, abandon your responsibilities, or become indifferent to the feelings of others. It begins with awareness. A simple, compassionate awareness of the moments when you leave your peace in someone else's hands. You begin to notice when you seek approval before trusting your own knowing, You notice when you replay a painful memory as though thinking about it one more time will finally change it. You notice when you try to control the future because uncertainty makes you feel unsafe. This noticing is not judgment, it is light. When light enters a dark room, it does not fight the darkness. It simply reveals what was already there. In the same way, awareness does not need to attack your fear, your anger, or your need for control. It allows you to see these patterns without becoming them. You can notice fear and still choose love. You can feel resentment and still become willing to forgive. You can experience uncertainty and still trust that life is not your enemy. This is where inner freedom begins. Not when every difficult emotion disappears, but when you stop allowing every emotion to define who you are. You are not the anxious thought. You are the awareness noticing the anxious thought. You are not the wound from your past. You are the presence capable of holding that wound with compassion. You are not the opinion someone formed about you. You are the life beneath every label, every role, and every story. There is a quiet place within you that has remained untouched by all the changes of your life. Your appearance has changed. Your relationships have changed. Your beliefs may have changed. The person you were 10 years ago may feel very different from the person you are today, yet something within you has been present through every season. It was there when you were a child looking at the sky. It was there during your first heartbreak. It was there in moments of joy, fear, confusion, and loss. It is still here now, silently witnessing these words. You may call it awareness, spirit, consciousness, or the presence of the source. The name is less important than the recognition. You are not being asked to create this presence. You are being invited to remember it. And as you remember, a new question begins to emerge. Instead of asking, how can I make life give me peace? You begin to ask, what within me is preventing me from receiving the peace that is already here? That question opens the door to the first lesson. Because before you can return to your true self, you must gently understand the voice that has been leading you away from it. The first lesson is that you do not have to believe every thought that passes through your mind. This may sound simple, but it can change the way you experience your entire life. The mind produces thoughts constantly. Some are useful, some are creative. Some help you solve a problem or remember something important, but many thoughts are old echoes. They are inherited fears, remembered judgments, imagined futures, and conclusions formed during moments when you did not yet understand yourself. A thought may say, you are not ready. Another may whisper, something will go wrong. Another may insist, you must make everyone happy or they will leave. Because these thoughts appear inside your own mind, you may assume they are true. You may even believe they are your identity. But a thought is not always truth. Sometimes it is only a habit. Imagine standing beside a river and watching leaves float past. You would not jump into the water and follow every leaf. You would simply notice each one as it moves through your field of vision. Your thoughts can be observed in the same way. One appears, remains for a moment, and then changes. Another takes its place. The suffering begins when you climb onto every thought and allow it to carry you away. A small uncertainty at work becomes a story about losing everything. A delayed message becomes proof that someone no longer cares. A tired morning becomes evidence that your life is going nowhere. The mind can take one moment and build an entire world around it. The ego depends on this unconscious movement. It takes a thought and turns it into an identity. It tells you that because you feel afraid, you must be weak. Because you made a mistake, you must be a failure. Because someone rejected you, you must be unworthy. Awareness creates space between the thought and the person observing it. In that space, you can ask, is this thought helping me return to peace, or is it pulling me deeper into fear? You do not need to fight the thought. Fighting often gives it more energy. You can simply recognize it. You might say inwardly, there is fear again. There is the old story. There is the need to be approved of. The moment you can see a pattern, you are no longer completely trapped inside it. This is the beginning of freedom. The second lesson is that fear grows when you try to control what cannot be controlled. Most people do not seek control because they are selfish or difficult. They seek control because some part of them is afraid. They believe that if they can predict every outcome, understand every person, and prevent every disappointment, they will finally feel safe. Perhaps you have done this in a relationship. You notice a change in someone's voice, and your mind begins searching for an explanation. You replay the conversation. You examine every word. You try to decide what the other person is thinking. You may ask questions not because you are truly curious, but because you want relief from uncertainty. For a few moments, an answer may calm you. Then another uncertainty appears. Control offers temporary comfort, but it rarely creates lasting peace. It teaches the mind that uncertainty is dangerous and that you cannot be at ease unless everything is known. Yet life has never promised complete certainty. Relationships change, bodies age, plans unfold differently than expected. People make choices you cannot make for them. Even when you prepare carefully, life may take a direction you did not anticipate. This does not mean life is cruel. It means life is alive. A river remains a river because it moves. If you tried to stop its movement completely, it would no longer be a river. In the same way, change is not an interruption of life. Change is one of the ways life expresses itself. The ego says, I will be peaceful when I know what will happen. The deeper self says, I can remain present even when I do not know. This does not mean you stop making plans or caring about outcomes. It means you hold your plans gently. You do what seems wise, loving, and honest, while releasing the belief that your peace depends on a particular result. Consider how much energy is spent trying to manage other people's perceptions. You choose your words carefully so no one will misunderstand you. You explain yourself repeatedly. You worry about how your decisions will be judged. You may even betray your own needs to preserve an image of being good, agreeable, or dependable. Yet no matter how carefully you behave, another person will still see you through the lens of their own history. Someone who fears abandonment may interpret your need for space as rejection. Someone who feels powerless may see your boundary as an attack. Someone who has not forgiven themselves may struggle to offer forgiveness to you. You cannot enter another person's mind and arrange their understanding. This realization can feel uncomfortable, but it can also be deeply freeing. You can choose to be sincere without needing to be perfectly understood. You can act with kindness without controlling how your kindness is received. You can apologize when you have caused harm without taking responsibility for every emotion another person experiences. Peace begins when you release the impossible task of controlling everyone's interpretation of you. The third lesson is that comparison is a form of forgetting. When you compare yourself to someone else, you temporarily forget that your life has its own rhythm, its own lessons, and its own season. You look at another person's path and use it as evidence against your own. Perhaps someone your age seems more secure. Someone you once knew appears happier. A friend has entered a new chapter while you feel uncertain about your next step. The ego interprets these differences as a ranking. It says one person is ahead and another is behind. But the soul does not measure life this way. A flower does not fail because it blooms later than another flower. Winter is not inferior to spring. Night is not a mistake because it does not contain sunlight. Each season has its own purpose, even when that purpose is not immediately visible. Comparison ignores the invisible. You see someone's achievement, but not the loneliness behind it. You see a relationship, but not the compromises being made within it. You see confidence, but not the years of doubt that came before it. You see the surface and then use it to judge the whole of your life. The mind says, why am I not there yet? A more compassionate question might be, what is this season asking me to learn? Perhaps this period of waiting is teaching you patience. Perhaps disappointment is helping you release an identity that was built around approval. Perhaps loneliness is revealing how often you abandon yourself to avoid being alone. Nothing needs to be romanticized. Pain is still pain. Loss can still be heartbreaking. Uncertainty can still feel heavy. But when you stop comparing your experience to someone else's, you become available to receive the wisdom hidden within your own life. The fourth lesson is that attachment turns preference into suffering. You may prefer for a relationship to continue, for a plan to succeed, or for someone to respond with love. There is nothing wrong with preference. The heart naturally hopes. It forms bonds. It imagines possibilities. Attachment begins when the mind says, this must happen for me to be whole. You may become attached to a person not only because you love them, but because you believe they carry a part of your identity. Without them, you fear you will not know who you are. You may become attached to a role because it gives you status, belonging, or purpose. You may become attached to youth because you have confused your body with the totality of your being. Then life changes, as it always does, and you experience the change as a threat to your existence. A relationship ends, and it feels as though you have disappeared. A career changes, and you no longer recognize yourself. The face in the mirror ages, and the ego whispers that your value is fading. But what if nothing essential has been taken from you? What if life is removing only what you mistook for your identity? This does not mean you should avoid love, commitment, or meaningful goals. It means you remember that no person, position, or appearance can contain the whole of who you are. You can love deeply without making someone responsible for your wholeness. You can value your work without believing your work is your soul. You can care for your body without demanding that it remain unchanged. Attachment says, do not change. Love says, I will meet you as you are. The ego tries to freeze life because it fears loss. The true self understands that love does not disappear simply because a form changes. A person may no longer be physically present, yet what they awakened in you can remain. A chapter may end, yet its wisdom can continue shaping you. The tree releases its leaves not because it has stopped loving them, but because release is part of its participation in life. Perhaps letting go is not always an ending. Perhaps it is trust made visible. The fifth lesson is that resistance often creates a second layer of pain. There is the pain of what happened, and then there is the pain of insisting that it should not have happened. There is the sadness of a loss, and then there is the story that life has treated you unfairly. There is fear about the future, and then there is judgment toward yourself for feeling afraid. The first pain may be unavoidable. The second is often created by the mind. Acceptance does not mean that you approve of everything. It does not mean injustice should be ignored or that harmful behavior should be welcome. Acceptance means that you stop arguing with the fact that this moment is already here. You cannot heal an experience while using all your energy to deny that it exists. Imagine someone who has reached a season of aging and feels betrayed by the body. They look in the mirror and compare themselves to an earlier version. Every change becomes evidence of loss. Yet beneath this resistance may be a deeper fear. If I am no longer who I was, am I still valuable? The spiritual invitation is not to pretend that aging brings no difficulty. It is to discover an identity deeper than appearance. The body moves through time, but awareness itself has no wrinkles. Presence does not become less sacred with age. Love does not lose its beauty because the face expressing it has changed. When you resist aging, you miss the life that is here now. When you resist uncertainty, you miss the guidance available in the present. When you resist grief, you prevent grief from moving through you. Emotions are like weather crossing the sky. A storm may be intense, but the sky is not destroyed by the storm. It remains wide enough to contain the rain, the wind, and the returning light. You are not being asked to become emotionally numb. You are being invited to discover the awareness spacious enough to hold every emotion without being reduced to any of them. This is why awareness is so powerful. It does not demand that fear disappear before you can feel peaceful. It allows fear to be present without becoming your master. You may say, I notice that I am afraid, and I am still here. You may say, I feel the need to control this, and I can choose to breathe. You may say, part of me wants approval, but I do not have to abandon myself to receive it. These quiet moments are spiritually significant. They may not look dramatic from the outside. No one may applaud them. Yet each time you witness the ego without automatically obeying it, you weaken an old pattern of suffering. You begin to understand that the ego is not an enemy that must be destroyed. It is a frightened structure built from memories, labels, and attempts to stay safe. It can be met with compassion. You do not heal fear by hating the fearful part of yourself. You heal it by bringing it into the presence of love. Perhaps the anxious voice within you is not asking to be silenced. Perhaps it is asking to be reassured. Perhaps the controlling part of you once learned that life was unpredictable. Perhaps the people-pleasing part learned that harmony depended on keeping everyone else comfortable. When you see these patterns with compassion, shame begins to dissolve. You are no longer saying, what is wrong with me? You begin asking, what has this part of me been trying to protect? That question changes the inner conversation. Instead of fighting yourself, you listen. Instead of condemning the ego, you understand its fear. Instead of giving it complete authority, you gently remind it that another way is possible. You can choose peace even when fear offers its familiar argument. You can choose honesty even when approval is uncertain. You can choose presence even when the future remains unwritten. And slowly, you discover that inner peace was never the absence of difficult thoughts. It was the awareness that allowed those thoughts to come and go without carrying your true self away. Once you recognize this, another doorway opens. Because seeing the ego is only the beginning. The deeper journey is learning how to return again and again to the love, forgiveness, trust, and quiet intelligence that have been waiting beneath it. The sixth lesson is that forgiveness is not something you offer only to another person. It is a gift you give to your own spirit. There may be someone whose name still changes the energy in your body. Perhaps they betrayed you, abandoned you, misunderstood you, or failed to love you in the way you needed. Even years later, the memory may remain alive. You may replay what happened and imagine what you should have said. You may wait for an apology that never comes. Part of you may believe that releasing the resentment would mean excusing the harm. But forgiveness is not approval. It does not require you to deny what happened. It does not mean returning to an unsafe relationship, removing healthy boundaries, or pretending that pain was insignificant. Forgiveness means you are no longer willing to let the past occupy the sacred space of your present. Resentment often feels like protection. It says, if I remain angry, I will never be hurt in this way again. Yet the person who harmed you may have continued with their life while you continue carrying the emotional weight. The resentment does not remain with them. It lives in your body, your thoughts, and your relationships. You may begin reacting to new people through the memory of an old wound. Someone arrives with a sincere heart, but you expect betrayal. Someone makes a small mistake, and the pain of the past returns with full force. Without realizing it, you are asking the present to pay a debt created by yesterday. Forgiveness gently interrupts this pattern. It begins not with a grand emotional transformation, but with willingness. You may not yet feel ready to forgive completely. You may simply become willing to stop feeding the pain. You may say inwardly, I do not know how to release this, but I am willing to learn. That willingness is a small opening through which light can enter. Imagine carrying a heavy stone for many years because someone once placed it in your hands. At first, holding it may seem justified. It represents what happened. It proves that your pain was real. But eventually, you realize that putting the stone down does not erase the event. It only ends your participation in carrying it. Forgiveness is putting down the stone. Sometimes the person you most need to forgive is yourself. You may still feel ashamed of a choice you made when you were afraid, lonely, young, or unaware. You may judge an earlier version of yourself with wisdom that only became available later. You say, I should have known better, but perhaps you could not have known what you had not yet learned. You do not need to pretend the mistake did not matter. You can take responsibility without turning responsibility into permanent self-punishment. You can repair what is possible, learn what the experience came to teach, and allow yourself to continue living. A garden does not reject the soil because weeds once grew there. The soil can be cleared, tended, and planted again. Your life also contains this capacity for renewal. Self-forgiveness is not saying what I did was acceptable. It is saying I refuse to make one chapter the definition of my entire being. You are still worthy of love while learning. You are still connected to the source while healing. Your true self was not destroyed by your confusion. It may simply have been hidden beneath fear. The seventh lesson is that surrender is not the same as giving up. Giving up comes from hopelessness. Surrender comes from trust. There are situations in life that cannot be solved by thinking harder. You may have spent months trying to understand why something happened. You may have imagined every possible outcome and prepared for every disaster. Still, the answer remains unclear. The mind often believes that more thought will create more control. Yet there comes a point when thinking becomes circling. You are no longer receiving wisdom, you are repeating fear. Surrender is the moment you stop demanding that life explain itself before you are willing to live it. You may still take action. You may make the phone call, have the conversation, visit the doctor, apply for the opportunity, or leave the relationship that is harming you. Surrender does not remove your responsibility. It changes the energy from which you act. Instead of acting from panic, you act from presence. Instead of forcing an outcome, you participate with life. You do what is yours to do and release what was never yours to control. Think of a river moving toward the ocean. It does not know every turn in advance. It encounters rocks, changes direction, moves slowly in some places and rapidly in others. Yet it continues because its nature is movement. You also carry an inner direction. There may be times when your path bends away from what you expected. What appears to be a delay may be protection. What feels like rejection may be redirection. What looks like an ending may be the clearing of space for a more honest life. You do not have to force yourself to believe that every painful event is secretly wonderful. Some experiences are genuinely difficult. Some losses leave an absence that cannot be explained away. Trust is not pretending that pain has no meaning. It is allowing the possibility that your understanding is incomplete. Perhaps life can hold a wider view than the one available to you in this moment. When you trust the flow of life, you stop treating uncertainty as proof that you have been abandoned. You begin to meet uncertainty as an open space. This space may be uncomfortable, but it is also where new possibilities enter. The eighth lesson is that intention is the energy you bring to life, not merely the outcome you want from it. The ego often thinks of intention as a demand. It says, I intend to make this happen. But deeper intention is less about forcing the world and more about choosing the quality of presence you wish to offer. You may not be able to control how a difficult conversation ends, but you can intend to enter it with honesty and compassion. You may not know whether a relationship will survive, but you can intend not to abandon your dignity. You may not know what the next chapter will contain, but you can intend to meet it with openness rather than bitterness. This kind of intention aligns you with the source because it is rooted in what you can give, not what you can take. Before entering your day, you might quietly ask, what energy do I wish to bring into this moment? Perhaps the answer is patience. Perhaps it is gentleness, courage, listening, or forgiveness. You do not need to perform these qualities perfectly. Intention is a direction, not a demand for perfection. When you forget, you return. When fear takes over, you notice it and begin again. A compass remains useful even when the traveler temporarily loses the path. It continues pointing home. Your intention can become such a compass. You may have noticed that when you enter a room carrying tension, you often find more tension. When you expect rejection, your body closes before anyone has spoken. When you believe people are against you, you interpret neutral behavior as hostility. This does not mean you create every painful experience. It means the energy you bring influences what you are able to see, receive, and offer. When your intention is peace, you begin noticing where you have been contributing to conflict. When your intention is love, you become aware of the moments when fear speaks through you. When your intention is truth, you recognize the places where you have been pretending. Awareness does not shame you. It brings you back into alignment. The ninth lesson is that love is not merely an emotion you receive from certain people. It is a way of being. Many people spend their lives waiting to feel loved. They look for evidence in messages, attention, praise, affection, and loyalty. These things can be beautiful, but they are also changeable. People become busy. Relationships pass through seasons. Someone who once understood you may no longer be able to meet you in the same way. When your entire sense of love depends on another person's behavior, your inner world becomes fragile. Spiritual love begins when you recognize love as something that can move through you even when it is not being returned in the form you expected. This does not mean you remain where you are mistreated. Love can leave. Love can create distance. Love can say no. Love can establish a boundary without hatred. Sometimes the most loving action is to stop participating in a pattern that harms both people. You can wish someone healing without giving them access to your life. You can understand another person's pain without accepting their cruelty. You can release the need for revenge while still protecting your peace. Love is not weakness. It is clarity without hatred. Fear asks, how do I protect myself from everyone? Love asks, how do I remain true to myself without closing my heart? There may be moments when love looks like tenderness. There may be moments when it looks like truth. There may be moments when it looks like silence, distance, or release. The form changes, but the essence remains the same. Love does not seek to punish. It seeks to restore harmony, beginning within you. Imagine the sun shining through a window. The window does not create the light. It allows the light to pass through. In the same way, you do not have to manufacture love through effort. You remove what blocks it. Judgment blocks it. Resentment blocks it. The need to be superior blocks it. The belief that you are unworthy blocks it. As these barriers soften, love becomes less of something you chase and more of something you recognize. You begin to see it in ordinary moments. A quiet morning, a stranger holding a door, a tree moving in the wind, the sound of someone you care about laughing. Your own breath continuing without your instruction. Life has been offering itself to you in countless small ways. The 10th lesson is that your true self is not somewhere in the distance waiting to be achieved. You do not need to become more impressive, more spiritual, or more perfect before you are allowed to experience connection with the source. The true self is what remains when the noise becomes quiet. It is present when you stop performing. It is present when you sit alone and no longer need to explain yourself. It is present in the moment you choose compassion over judgment, truth over approval, and peace over the familiar pull of conflict. You are not creating a new self. You are remembering the self that existed before fear taught you to hide. Think of the sky behind a field of clouds. The clouds may be dark and heavy. They may cover everything for a time, yet the sky itself is not damaged. It remains open, vast, and unchanged behind the weather. Your fear is weather. Your sadness is weather. Your anger, confusion, and self-doubt are weather. Your true nature is the sky. This does not mean your emotions are unimportant. They deserve to be felt, understood, and honored, but they do not contain the whole of you. When you remember this, you can hold your life with greater gentleness. You no longer need to rush every season. You do not need to solve your entire future tonight. You do not need everyone to approve of the person you are becoming. You can breathe and allow this moment to be enough. Perhaps peace is not a destination you reach after completing all your healing. Perhaps peace appears each time you stop resisting yourself. It appears when you forgive one memory. It appears when you release one expectation. It appears when you trust one uncertain step. It appears when you choose love in a place where fear once controlled you. These moments may seem small, but they are the way the soul returns home. And once you begin living from this deeper awareness, the final question is no longer whether you understand these lessons. The question becomes how you carry them into the ordinary moments of each day. Living these truths does not require you to withdraw from the world or become someone who never feels afraid, disappointed, or uncertain. It simply means that you begin meeting life from a different place within yourself. You still wake up to responsibilities. You still encounter difficult people. You still experience changes you did not choose, but something begins to shift. You no longer give every situation the power to determine your inner state. You remember that peace is not something the world hands to you when it finally behaves according to your wishes. Peace is the way you choose to meet the world. The 5 lessons are simple, though they may take a lifetime to remember. Observe your thoughts without becoming them. Release the need to control what life has not placed in your hands. Stop measuring your path against the path of another. Forgive so the past no longer governs the present. And return again and again to the love and awareness of your true self. These are not rules to perform perfectly. They are directions home. There will be mornings when you forget. You may wake with anxiety already waiting in your mind. You may find yourself replaying yesterday or trying to predict tomorrow. When this happens, you do not need to criticize yourself. You can pause before entering the noise of the day. Feel one breath entering your body. Feel it leaving. For a few moments, let nothing be required of you. You do not have to solve your life. You do not have to decide what every feeling means. You only need to notice that beneath the movement of thought, you are still here. This small period of stillness can become a sacred beginning. It reminds you that awareness comes before reaction. You are not required to follow the first fearful thought that appears. You have the ability to choose the energy with which you enter the day. You might quietly ask, can I bring peace into what I am about to do? You may not feel peaceful immediately. The question itself is enough. It turns your attention away from controlling circumstances and toward caring for the quality of your presence. As you move through the day, become curious about the moments when your peace begins to leave you. Perhaps it happens when someone does not respond as you hoped. Perhaps it happens when you compare your life with another person's. Perhaps it happens when uncertainty awakens an old need for control. Instead of judging the reaction, observe it. You may say inwardly, I am trying to find safety through control, or I am seeking my worth in someone else's approval. This simple recognition brings light into the pattern. You do not have to change everything immediately. Awareness itself begins the transformation. A gardener does not pull open a flower to make it bloom faster. The gardener creates the conditions for growth. There is water, light, space, and patience. Your spiritual growth also needs patience. You may understand forgiveness long before your heart feels ready to release the pain. You may understand surrender while still wanting certainty. You may know that comparison brings suffering and still find yourself measuring your life against others. This does not mean you have failed. It means you are human, learning to remember. When resentment appears, you can practice forgiveness in small ways. You do not have to force yourself into an emotion you do not feel. You may begin by deciding not to repeat the painful story for 1 hour. You may bless yourself with the words, "I am willing to be free from this." Forgiveness may arrive gradually, like morning light entering a dark room. At first, there is only a faint change. Then shapes become visible. Eventually, you realize the night has ended. Gratitude can also help you return to the present, not as a way of denying difficulty, but as a way of remembering that difficulty is not the whole of life. At the end of the day, you might notice 3 quiet gifts. Perhaps one person spoke kindly to you. Perhaps you felt the warmth of sunlight through a window. Perhaps your body carried you through another day. Perhaps you found one moment of calm in the middle of uncertainty. Gratitude does not erase what hurts. It expands your awareness so pain is no longer the only thing you can see. You may also begin to practice trust. Trust does not require you to know exactly where life is taking you. It means you stop treating every unanswered question as a threat. When you do not know what comes next, you can ask, what is mine to do in this moment? Sometimes the answer will be to act. Sometimes it will be to speak honestly, create a boundary, ask for help, or begin again. At other times, the answer may be to wait, listen, and allow clarity to form. There is wisdom in both movement and stillness. A tree does not resist winter because it remembers spring. It releases what can no longer remain and rests without believing that rest is the end. Somewhere beneath the visible branches, life continues. You also carry this quiet continuity. Even when you feel disconnected from yourself, the true self has not disappeared. Even when fear is loud, peace remains beneath it. Even when you have forgotten love, the source has not forgotten you. You are not trying to earn your way back to what is sacred. You are removing the beliefs that made you feel separate from it. As this understanding deepens, your relationships may begin to change. You listen more carefully because you no longer need every conversation to prove your worth. You speak more honestly because you are less afraid of disapproval. You create boundaries without carrying hatred. You forgive without returning to what harms you. You begin to see that inner peace and self-respect belong together. Love does not require self-abandonment. Compassion does not require you to remain available to every demand. Harmony with the source is not found by betraying your inner knowing. It is found when your thoughts, words, and actions begin to reflect the quiet truth within you. Some days this may feel natural. Other days you may return to old patterns. The invitation is always the same: begin again. Begin again with one conscious breath. Begin again with one honest thought. Begin again by releasing one judgment. Begin again by choosing not to carry yesterday into the next conversation. Every return matters. You may have spent much of your life believing that transformation would feel dramatic, but often the deepest changes are almost invisible. They happen when you no longer send the angry message, when you pause before judging, when you stop explaining yourself to someone determined to misunderstand you, when you allow grief to move through you without turning it into hopelessness. These quiet choices become the shape of a peaceful life. And perhaps this is what the 5 lessons have been pointing toward all along. You were never being asked to conquer life. You were being invited to stop fighting yourself. You were never being asked to become worthy. You were being invited to remember that your worth was never lost. You were never being asked to create peace from nothing. You were being invited to uncover the peace that fear, resentment, comparison, and control had temporarily hidden. As you move forward, carry this gentle question with you. Am I responding from fear, or am I returning to love? You will not always answer perfectly. You do not need to. The question itself will help you remember. The river, your journey is unfolding in the same way. Trust the pace. Forgive the detours. Bless the person you were. Honor the person you are. And remain open to the wisdom life is still revealing. You are not becoming someone new. You are returning to the quiet, loving, and timeless presence that has always been within you. And perhaps in this moment, you can feel it. Not as an idea, but as a little more space in your breath, a little less weight in your heart, a gentle recognition that you do not need to carry everything any longer. You can let this moment hold you. You can trust that love remains. You can choose peace now. If these reflections awaken something within you, share the lesson that spoke most deeply to your heart in the comments. And subscribe if you would like to continue exploring these quiet journeys of awareness, healing, and spiritual remembrance together. Until we meet again, be gentle with yourself. Walk slowly. Forgive freely. Trust deeply. And remember that the peace you have been searching for has never been separate from who you truly are.